So this is the one where I said I found really something that is Martin and Gemini. Moon is ruling the night. So we're going to call on our goal for shielding from assassination of the broadcaster in general. um, this is a heavy video, but we need to talk about this. And I saw a fellow Israeli astrologer, Yair Tribelskis, talking in Hebrew for those who understand, talking about kind of the. I just began to watch the video and I stopped and I said I must record this video, talking about the hard aspect between Mercury and Pluto, meaning the in conjunction. Okay, because Mercury is in Virgo now. But there's another thing that's happening in the sky, which I think we want to pay attention to, because the moon is going to go over this speech again. Okay? Mercury was squaring Urano-Algol. Okay? And even though Algol was not eclipsing right yet, Mercury was applying to, as it was squaring, it was applying to, yes, Regulus, of course, but also this trine that is now leaving with Pluto. Sorry, it's the inconjunct, I'm sorry, with Pluto, but also the hard aspect, okay, the square with Sedna. Okay, and there are several approaches as to how we work with asteroids. The people like Marin who are like, the fuck, if it's not conjunct, I don't want to hear about this, which is okay, and she has good reasoning to say so. And then there is the Astro Victor, the Victor approach, which means, yes, I do talk about the squares, the sextiles, the hard aspects with the asteroids. I do see them on the map. Now here, I can't say that I didn't see on the map where the conjoining of building up from a hard aspect to Urano-Algol, of the asteroid of children, to a hard aspect with Sedna, not show up. And that was another event that happened with the state of Israel. We're gonna bring because you know that I'm doing this video, so you know how I'm doing this video. You saw me on 7th October, you know what to expect, you know that I need to talk about this. Not on the page of random leaders who take it difficult, but, but on my podcast. Is we have gonna open it whole sign, and let's see if we have Lebanon. So you know that I view this thing not as a local crisis. You know that I don't view the refugee and the kidnapping of the children of Yemen and the then explosion, okay, of the expandable children, and then suddenly we have an oil crisis, okay? And so, you know, the connection to the foundation of the Taliban in 1996 to the White March, which was also on the topic of the another case when one person was accused for something that's very likely a pedo ring, kind of like Epstein, but way worse. Or not worse, okay? And not the people who practice this, that extort for the elite, okay? And you know that this is direct connection to foundation of Taliban, and what we call the refugee crisis, okay? You know how I view the Petrol case in 1952 for before Mr. Christopher, I think, way before. That, so you know, because I'm not explaining this country, that country, or when I see what they did, what they bring them back home, or this is like, yeah, when I want to do that, we bring them back home. But this is also how not excited. Israel is doing this, Israel is doing that. Mind you, the people who escaped from the ghetto were not eager to walk on the land of Germany, except other countries didn't get to. But then who knows what they had to do with the, what was it, the partisans? They were rapists and murderers. They were no freedom fighters. They were against the Nazis, but the enemies of your enemy is not necessarily a friend. And so now we have for the chart of Lebanon. What do you mean no more, no houses? Okay, we don't have like an actual natal chart. Let's try and look for that. Okay. We don't have an actual natal chart for Lebanon. So let's see if we get something. There's Arcadia astrology. Let's see, where did they put the rising? So they did not. So are we gonna work? Yes, with what we have. I don't know why we don't have natal chart. This is 1943, mind you. We should be having this when I see a country chart without an ascendant, you understand that these charts are pre-elected on the minute. So you understand that this is by purpose. They don't want us to know the houses, which means you have to assume the worst in terms of the people. That's usually when you don't see ascendant, you'd have to assume the worst. Okay. With leaders chart, I don't tend to that in that way because people sometimes are afraid to give the ascendant, or sometimes they don't know. Maybe they are also born and their birth is not registered sometimes, and then they have a cover story because they're all expendable children grown. Okay, but for countries, absolutely you have to assume the worst when you don't see ascendant. Now, let's see what is this thing. What was this thing doing in the chart of first Israel, then Lebanon? And to get that, we must understand another event that happened. That was supposedly one plane flying above Tel Aviv, and yes, it indeed killed a person, and it was dropping in the middle of the city. No warning, no sirens. We usually have sirens. You know, Israel developed the Kela David, which is a laser thingy that can destroy metal. So it can destroy rockets and it can destroy planes, but it can also, oh, you have an advertisement. Yes. I need to buy that, but I can't afford it right now. I'm basically spent my money on shoes. But thanks to Rothschild, I could buy shoes. So, so the thing is that this Kela David, of course, it destroys metal. It can also destroy cars and do Maui-like things, or Nova-like things, or Gaza-like things, or Houthi-like things. And that is giving an international use of a patent. And remind you again that the state Israel, look at the sun, 23 degrees Taurus. 8th house. 8th house is where both where we give to others, and Israel is known for giving kind of like search and rescue services to others. Okay, I have to mention this as well. But also when we receive from others, like money, funding, and this is the leaders. Sun is the leaders. Leaders are externally owned. That's what Sun 8th house means. This is also Sun for United States. And this is known in public because the ruler Venus is in the 10th house, in Cancer, okay? And the ruler Venus tells us that there are big wealth families of the Orient type. So they are invested in art, in entertainment industry, in music industry. And we know that the Rothschild, the Rockefellers, have winery. They had Rockefeller made patents for medicines, but herbal medicines in the beginning. And although Taurus is not immediately the herbal medicine, and we know that they also own entertainment industry, they own most of the land, resources, okay, natural resources, and so on, and royal families. Okay, so you can see how for the 8th house, ruler of the 8th house in Cancer, in the 10th, the owning of leaders, and the moon in Leo in the 11th, owning of royal families. But the royal families, again, ruling of Israel. So this could mean that, for example, the royal kingdom, think about the British mandate. This is exactly what you see here. The British mandate for the leaders, giving Israel basically its land, or its mandate. It's not giving land. And this is another thing you need to know. Every 100 years or so, the contracts on the real estate of when can a country use the real estate of a certain royal family or a certain land. This is where they run out. Okay, when you had people like Kissinger saying Israel will only live until blah blah blah, that's what they meant. Okay, it's kind of like, hey, we know that there's this contract, you don't really own the land, you get permission to use it for 100 years or so. This is where the last contract is renewing, okay? Even when you have a declaration of independence in the middle, it's not a changing, okay? It's kind of like a sablet. And that's true also for Palestine. So it's not changing who owns the land. Okay, so now that we got that one established, and we got the fact that in Tel Aviv, suddenly some plane with all the technology can fall in the middle of Tel Aviv. One person was killed, I think, a couple wounded, which again you wouldn't expect. Okay, it's Tel Aviv, it's the most crowded city in Israel. In the middle of the day, no sirens. And then Israel said this is Houthis and attacked an oil field in Yemen. Who is the Israel that attacked? We know it's externally founded. Or maybe Rockefeller, maybe Rothschild, or maybe British mandate. We don't know. But definitely not Israel. Another thing we think is maybe WHO. Now let's take a look at where was this Mercury sedna thingy taking place. First of all, Mercury was crossing the Mars of Israel. So war, planet of war. A couple of days ago. Okay, it's not the Tel Aviv thingy. The Tel Aviv thingy was example because this thing was done again. And that's what I'm concerned about. So this was to be going. Okay, it's kind of like the past couple of days. And then we have Pluto in Aquarius, which for State of Israel would be 5th house. But the Saturn goes to the 11th. And again, all of this 11th house for the army, the bureaucracy, army, Mars, bureaucracy, Saturn, police, Mars, Saturn, people. Yes, but we think about the welfare and so on. In Israel, you cannot have a job that is not affiliated with corruption. It's not unusual. It's not unique to Israel, but it means that as people we owned, and if you don't want to be part of corruption, eventually you get sick, and this is kind of what happened. And people are owned in this way because you're dependent on your income for welfare, and you cannot do something that is legal all the way through outside. Okay? And this is a problem I have with my business. You see, with taxation, okay, Saturn, and Pluto psychologists. Okay, so when you try to go to therapy in Israel, a lot, we had the cases for psychologists, regressing people who went through sexual boundary violation in childhood back to childhood, hurting them again on purpose in exact same form. That was the psychology treatment that usually you fight a lot to get. Okay, you wait a lot of time, Saturn, to get. So this is unfortunately true. And we're in the age of Pluto, Neptune, so drugs and psychology we examine, but also politics, Pluto, okay, with the political elite or the political people, the political leaders, all of them owned by these world families, That's the chart. That's the chart. It's not rumors. That's the chart. This is where the wealth is coming from. And of course, Scorpio in the second house, Israel has oils. Okay? Scorpio is oil. Israel has oils. That's for sure. But with Chiron retrograde, there is issue around finding these oils because they're in deep waters. What Yemen was threatening to bomb was the oil underneath the Dead Sea, which is both, the Dead Sea is used both for a great chemical company, Kiel, okay? Great chemical company, so they use it, and then it's a great touristic attraction. All the Germans that didn't want us in the Second World War, they come here for to treat their skin, okay? It's true. They need the skin. It's a filtering. It's the lowest place on Earth, filled with minerals, packed with many things. We have tourists from all over the world. I advise you, whenever this is open, do come. Only in the not summer. Come in September. Come in October. If you come in the summer, you won't be. It's like Qatar. You won't be able to enjoy it. But February and so there are floods, so it's more difficult. But a great place to visit. And if it's not stinky, it is not. That's that mud that you're supposed to put. If it doesn't really stinks, that's not the real thing. Okay, the mud is supposed to be extremely stinky. But I don't know what you put on your body there. Just go into the waters. It's gonna be okay. Unless the hood is to attack the oil underneath. Okay, that place which you understand has signification. So this is where we have the Chiron, but we can't really harvest it without creating big problems like a war, Mars, Leo. And it's also what this oil is not owned by the state of Israel. It is owned by the royal families and by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. So we have difficulty to use it. Second house is our resources, both in natal chart and chart of a country. So if you wonder why they want to standardize astrology, that's why. It's not because you're going to get hurt here getting a reading from me. It's because of this. Okay? So now that we get to that, yes. So this little sedna issue, sedna square, sedna is right now in the 9th house of international relations. But you see, it is Gemini ruled 9th house. So this is trade, children, law, contracts, technology. Trade in children by the law systems. Okay? And the use of technology. Or to masquerade that. Biometric. Okay, child labor and technology. We have Mercury on the 10th on Aldebaran to have material gain through this, but this is also the ruler of the 12th house which means our hidden enemy can cause a downfall by exposing this. It's just that because the entire world, this is why they blame Israel for doing all the blackmail with the children. Okay, so this is why they blame Israel, but actually, if Israel is owned by these world families and world families, then it would be more correct to say the Rothschild, the Rockefellers, rather than and the other world families that we don't know about, that are amidst this globalist agenda, than a country that does not even have sovereignty. But this is what they want you to do. They want you to talk about either the Jews, and then they can say anti-Semitism, and for them it's not mine. There was Holocaust. There were many Jews killed. It's no problem. They didn't stop it. They created it. When Baron Rothschild was arrested, it was big war. They didn't stop it. Okay. And also they don't want. They want you to either go for the Jews or go for the leaders, or for the people to go for the leaders. If leaders not elected, why do we go for the leaders? Okay, it's like they're gonna show me to the face what Bibi is doing, but it's not Bibi's doing. Somebody extorts this leader. I need the people who extort. I don't need the leaders. The leaders, you change the leader, but same thing will happen, right and left, with a different script. Okay, think about North Korea and the Jaoshe. The Jaoshe sounds like John Stuart Mill. It sounds so good. Caring for society, for the community, and having individual rights and sovereignty, both of the country and of the people. That's the Jaoshe. Okay, want to go to YouTube and listen to the Jaoshe transcribed in English. So you get to know how many beautiful words are said by politicians, and it's not the fault of the politicians so much as the fault of those who extort them, and the fact that you can't be a politician unless you are maturing from the expandable children jail prison camp. Okay, it's not experiment. It's basically kind of like the jail experiment. You want to take a look at the jail students with the electric shocks and all, put rape and murder in, and do that with children. So people doing that to each other, that's what they do to each other. And they have all kind of like scenarios and surprises. And you have survivors speaking. I'm not going to overly state the name of people because I'm going to give them kind of like rest. But you can check for survivors of satanic ritual abuse and hear the many stories around the world. This is including Israel. And this is where the downfall of Israel is as well, because this is where people are kidnapped to hospital, did not registered at birth. 12th house is always the issue, but when somebody comes like Hamas, okay, or Palestine, with placements around this 12th axis, the ruler of the enemy is on Aldebaran, so they can be victorious. And this is what people think that is happening. It's not what's happening. Okay? On the other hand, the people that say that pro-Israel and pro-this and pro-that, you got to check the Virgo placements, because Virgo is the 12th house of Israel. Okay? It can be secret admirers, but if they're not so secret, it could also be people that through compliance with the WHO and the WEF, which is also trade, is also Virgo, and this is international from overseas, try to have a victory here in Israel, a sort of victory. Maybe they want to reign, maybe they want the land. They would need, anybody who would want to become a leader here would need or to invest here, but they need to change for the expandable children, because you are expandable to the system worldwide. Okay, those who practice expandable children practice expandable people and expandable leaders, and this is so. Okay, it's like, unless you want to live on the sword your entire life and be imprisoned, 12th house, due to your involvement basically with this country. When I think about this, so it's very problematic to grow with love here. Okay, so that is a big issue. Yes, I was born in this country, was raised in this country, but I also have to speak the truth here. And any scandals with children, Mercury is spiking up. Okay, the wars that we see. So, this sedna is in the ninth house of Israel, something that is an international scandal about trade, about children, and so on. Sedna has never been in known history in Gemini. 1200 years ago, we didn't have Israel, we didn't have Palestine, we didn't have Homo sapiens. Okay, all these things we didn't have. So it's a different animal. It acts differently. When Mercury was crossing over for the Mars of Israel, there was another event, but this time regarding Lebanon. And this was suddenly in a village called Majd el-Shams. Suddenly another plane dropped, or rocket dropped, and there was children, right, with the Olympics, it's compatible to children playing soccer. And I think 7 or 13 children died. And this is a Druze village of people who are very loyal to the country, always serving the IDF and so on. And so then Israel, of course, intensified, it says it's Lebanon, and then intensifies attacks in Lebanon, a country that is a friend country to Israel. Okay, Hezbollah is not Lebanon, Lebanon is not Hezbollah. And again, when we say Israel, we don't actually say Israel, because Israel, as per wealth, ownership, sovereignty, just like any other nation state, doesn't exist. It never did. But they want you to talk about whether Israel is legal or not, thereby creating an existence of an entity that, as per sovereignty, for not really sovereign. And if you stay here, you understand, if you're not with the working camp, then you're in a problem, okay? And this is how you get situations like I talk to you and I say, yes, I bought shoes. I bought some good shoes so that I can walk. And then I had some things that I needed, like panties. I think if you need it, you need it. Okay? And a jar of honey, and I don't have money for food for this month, so I have to rely on like donations and stuff. That's crazy. Okay? This, if you think welfare-wise, you think this is very crazy. But this is so that you will be a part of the war machine against children. And that, yes, difficult. Even your body is not compliant with that. Okay, you get sick all the time. Plus, having a stellium in the 6th house is not the best location for me, but I don't really have another location that I know. I have pets and I have family, so it's difficult for me to move out. Even though I can like the place and like the land and like, for most of the people, when they don't make the prison cell experiment in a nation, where most people are very warm and welcoming. Israelis are no better or worse than other peoples. So that is for Israel chart. Okay, 9th house, international scandal, for to know with the medicine, for know with the WHO, with the welfare kidnapping children, for organ trade in children, maybe something like this as well, banking, all of this 12th house to the 9th. It's just activation. Sedna is betrayal. So there can be also attempt to want to conquer land, but not from Israel, from other countries wanting to conquer land by proxy, saying this is Israel, and then they enjoy the land. Okay, if the royal family owns all the land here, we have a mandate. But in terms of the land and the natural resources, we don't have a sovereignty. Okay? We have permission to use for this land. Rothschild Rockefeller can at any time when this contract stops, and also in between contracts, they don't really respect contract, the people who use expandable children. So they can say, okay, enough, we don't want you here. Ga weg, go away. This is how they evacuated the entire South, the entire North, with laser. And they say it's Hamas. Of course it is Hamas, but who created Hamas? Then you say Israel. No. Israel does not exist as a sovereign country. But they want you to talk about Israel or the Jews. God forbid not. The royal family, still the British royal family, and for the wealth families, for those Rockefeller, Rothschild, but also for those surrounding them with the secret societies, they got dividends. Rockefeller and Rothschild got dividends to the Vatican, and this is something we need to talk about because they want you to say, oh, Satan is ruling for the Vatican. Satan is not taking over the Vatican. The Vatican is the Vatican. The Spanish Inquisition was the Spanish Inquisition. Now the thing has changed. This is why, but they get the Jews to do it, because Christians can't do interest and Muslims can't do interest, but there's always the Jew of the town. And that's your Rockefeller and Rothschild. Okay? Who dictates how they are breeded? The Vatican. So that is something to keep in mind. It has nothing to do with Christ, with Moses, or with Muhammad, although as people say, Muhammad was waiting for a 6-year-old Aisha to grow up. He wasn't inventing anything. And Judaism and Christianity came before that. Okay, it's just they weren't even bothering to mention that because that was not an issue. And Muhammad was changing for every woman to be a woman that can be wed, because of lack of will and consent. Of course, there were actually more girls than boys. So that the girls, it's natural correct for itself. When you have mistreat of women, there would be born even more women so that they can change that. Nature. This is not per family, per society. Okay, so don't think if you have plenty of girls, it's because, no. It's per society. We see that happening. But then what sometimes happens, these women compete for the attention of the men, and then there is patriarchy, but then you can no longer ignore it at a certain stage, and women would want be careful to change that as well. There are more in numbers. So this is where nature would give you the benefit of having more people that would have this interest to liberate, or having other unique strengths, like psychic abilities and so on. So we got it, international crisis derived from the 12th house, and in this case is very likely Wef and Hu, the currency system, Virgo, Mercury, currency, and the hospitals, which is 12th house, World Health Organization, again, here having victory, that could be a Pyrrhus win, if you don't call on Archangel Michael, you still have the Aldebaran, but it's to win at every price, but here is on the price of the children. And so that was one thing that sparked the area. And 5th house is also children, where Pluto is. If Pluto in Capricorn was the soil, the land, 5th house is children, which tells you that nothing that happened in 7th of October was outside of the context of the crisis of expandable children. Simple. It's also true to the world. When I was young, I'm 3rd generation to Holocaust, we were told that people were telling blood stories about the Jews, that they were using the blood of children and so on and so forth again. And you hear something like that, this is crazy, why would they tell this about the Jews? It's just people. But the thing is, it was not the Jews, the everyday common Jews, There were very likely still child weddings, there were very likely still incest, in our lineage, in our families, we need to understand, regardless of if we're Jews or not, This is important. But this is also important to understand that there was these families, the Baron Rothschild or the Rockefellers and so on, that they were cutting dividends to the church, and those guys were doing satanic ritual abuse, which was using the blood sacrifice of children. It's that this Chisbat stories, it's like, how can they say this about the Jews? It's not the Jews, but they want you to either talk about the Jews, so you're anti-Semitic, or talk about the leaders, or now we have a country, talk about the country. They can replace and expand either of those without tending to the Baron Rothschild that when Hitler arrested him, we had a world war. But Hitler had to comply with the code to practice satanic abuse. And we have Mein Kampf that they don't want you to read because they don't want you to understand that literally every world leader is forced, including Israeli, to follow Mein Kampf that was eloquently written by Adolf Hitler. And this is the slavery agenda. But we also have to understand that the indigenous societies, they follow this by the tribe. Tribalism, what I say, with your tribal thinking is demociding you, because this is true. Before there were Abrahamic religions, before there were secret societies, before there was Hitler at the hands of these secret societies, so the Jews will hate them and everybody will hate them, and he was doing nothing but complying, otherwise he wouldn't get cyanide, which is how you suicide. And this is where Opus Dei gets into the equation. But Opus Dei is another secret society that's hosted by the Vatican, and they trade in death. Okay, so they give you the type of death that you want, only if you comply with them. Actually, they try to recruit. When I did channeling experiment, I said, I heard people say, we want to choose your that and that, but I saw it's not good energy. Okay, because I was manifesting that I would have easy death. Okay, and then they try to make you, you have to follow this, and you have to follow this, and you have to follow this, but they basically extort you for the type of death that you have, but they're also not reliable. As we saw with the murder of Peter R. de Vries, they followed JFK, but still took 9 days between his assassination on July 6 and his announced death on July 15, supposedly from 5 bullets, one of them in his head, another very likely in his heart, from nearly zero distance. Okay, and so we understand this is not Tahi, it's not just Tahi was the proxy, yes, but the Marengo process now is in Dubai. They want to bring him instead of Hans, which was whistleblower on Deming, that snuffed children, and the Dutch person sitting without Dutch passport in Spain, still haunted by all these targeting and psychic attacks and whatnot, and was psychiatrically tortured in a country that invented open dialogue and that is to validate for what the person says and to believe what the person says as a method to heal psychosis without pills, without drugs, without pharma. That's Netherlands, okay? So you hear about the Vanderkolks, but I also want you to hear about the good things, because if you get the open dialogue and if you get the Herman Kochs, the Dutch author, and I recommend you to read these books, then you can see for what the Vanderkolks are, and that's infiltration of Netherlands, just as much as of what the Pfizer is infiltration of Israel. Okay, so I want you to also not hate of your community or hate on your tribe or hate on your culture, whichever culture. Okay, there are good things and horrid things to fix in each culture, and when we're more inclusive, then we're less susceptible to infiltration. Now let's go to the Lebanon chart. We see children, hospitals, children, this and sedna, betrayal on international level for Israel. Okay, so the bombs, children killed, now let's go to war. And it's not Israel, it's these families that trade in weapon. And everyone's invested in that, including you and me. Okay, because even when I get welfare, there is tax that I pay. There's minimal tax for the transfer, the bank transfers of the money to my bank account, and then I have to have bank account, and then for this tiny money, if you double it with the couple of millions that have to rely on the government if they don't want to stand in corruption and be sick and basically die, even worse death, because when we comply, then of course it drains on our system as well. And so this is the debt rating of Opus Dei, nothing Jewish. It's design of our labor market, of industrial society. You can do industrial and technology completely different ways, and there were always technologies. Now, let's go for the chart of Lebanon. And again, if I don't have ascendant, I'll have to assume the worst. So if I see something here, I have to assume that there is ascendant on the 22nd degree of to kill and be killed, 11th. This is not giving me. Let's see if the transits do something that I don't see here. I want the degrees. Okay, let's try to look at it through the other chart, Arcadia. So this is 22nd November 1943. This would put the sun on the anaretic degree of Scorpio. Now this is already something interesting. Because I don't know where the sun is, so I can't say, oh, sun is in the 8th house. There is no Lebanon, it's externally owned. I have to assume it's externally owned. Okay? If no transparency, I have to assume the worst. Anaretic degree Scorpio. Okay? Sun in Scorpio is not fallen. It's also not in detriment. But what can we say about Scorpios? First of all, for the decan of Scorpio, and this is thank you to Austin Kopak, the last decan of Scorpio is associated with being nostalgic about something of a scorpionic thing, which is a battle. Okay? So this tells me that they chose anaretic degree of Scorpio. This is on the degree. That tells me that there is a telos to this country. There's a premonition. There's a foresight that the country can see the future, the leaders can see the future here. But the future is nostalgic. What leaders do we know that were nostalgic about the past? From the 20th century. His name comes up again. Adolf Hitler, but also Benito Mussolini. Benito Mussolini, very inspired by Adolf Hitler. Again, enemies can be inspired of each other too. He wanted to unite Italy, which says nothing bad from the cantons. Italy is still divided today. You go to North Italy, you go to South Italy, you go to different countries, and you have to respect it and you have to respect the culture. But I think still today, there was a visitation of the Marengo process there, but I think they moved to Dubai, so. Yeah, but if we talk about the Italian mafia, then first we have to talk about Robobank and mafia and Free Mama from the Mafia, which is not at all Italian. It was happening in Netherlands. There's another glass to the whistleblowers. And so Mussolini, he wanted to unite Italy, but he wanted to unite Italy, he wanted to unite the land, and with the people, he said, it's like a body where the people are the cells in the body. And what do we know about cells in the body? They regenerate all the time, which means they die all the time. But people are expandable. Okay? That's fascism for you. Fascism is way more intricate, but this is what Benito Mussolini did, and he was nostalgic about the land. Okay? And so here we have leaders that are nostalgic about a battle. There are many ways you can take this, okay? I have Mars 22 degree in this decan is very compatible for solving cold cases. Okay, but the Vries had Sun there, 22 degree. What he did miss that Geslagever, and it was in the 5th house of the cult show, 7.7 million Dutch, and people abroad watching and solving murder, crimes, which of course he picked the files that were associated with what's happening today. And if you're smart enough, you see what he did there. One of the greatest journalists of our time, unfortunately, was also extorted, eventually defended Deming, and so was not expanded from being expandable. And that is intricacy we need to address and solve with people that were hurt in the process, like Lars and his wife, that did not receive help for whistleblowing on Deming. This also needs to be corrected, but is very appropriate for solving cold cases, but is for leaders here in the country, is very likely that they would be nostalgic about the old land, and so they would want to imperialize, but they would see the people as expandable in that process. This is what they tried to create in Lebanon. But what happened with Lebanon? It's a modern country. It doesn't really like that. It doesn't have all the electricity in the rural areas. When I saw people speaking that they're coming from Lebanon, okay, they didn't have all the facilities, they didn't have all the this, they didn't have all the that, but they wanted peace with Israel. They admire for the technology, they admire, well, this new country, secular country, okay? The land itself is so beautiful, okay? But Hezbollah really ruined for the place because the land is just so beautiful. When you have in the winter, for the snow and the mountains and everything that's beautiful about northern Israel, it's in Lebanon even more. So it's a very, very beautiful country. Understand that resources there very likely exist, and so it can be that there are natural resources, but in the 8th house, and I would predict this Scorpio to be the 8th house, or kind of like worst case scenario. Why not the 12th? Because the 12th would mean the leader is imprisoned, which I don't see that much there. Okay, so I would predict for worst case scenario that this Scorpio with the oils is sitting pretty in the 8th house and is externally owned. Then we would look at the rest of the planets. There's Mars in Gemini. When I did today the talisman, those who watch me, okay, the talisman for Urano Algol, okay, people say, who's the crazy person that does that? Me! Lot of fortune was on it, and Algol was not minima. And why did I do a talisman of Urano Algol, if you ask, is because this is the volatility that brought women the right to vote, that brought us to even talk about will and consent, that brought us to look at things differently, and to shield from the effects that are anti-side of this combination. I would use Algol for that shielding of this truth. Yes, for the previous talisman also was to do with expandable children. This one, other things came to the topic. Okay, it's just different talisman. So what did I say? When Mars right now is in Gemini, they're having Mars return, which already tells me it's a good time to be starting something. Because their Mars return is conjoining their Saturn, but it's also going to square Saturn with Jupiter. So Jupiter and Mars together in Gemini must be starting a war. Okay? And so what did Austin Kopek say about Mars in Gemini? He says, we do not. It happened because he had a mistake that he talked about the talisman of Mars, and he said a Mars in Gemini, and then he said, no, we do not ever want to have a talisman or capture the skies when Mars is in Gemini. Why did he say that? Mars is hot and fiery and aggressive and has direction, okay? And quick, okay? Mars is taking action. You might not think about this as Mars ruling Scorpio, because like Scorpio can get into loops and so on and so forth. Scorpio is an interesting sign, but Mars also rules Aries. Just to get in one sudden day, what you know with Scorpios, one sudden day, enough is enough, sever ties, and that's it. No going forwards. And it will always be surprising even to the Scorpio themselves. And so this is Mars, and then Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is quick, childish, and tries things just for the sake of it, okay? Is also ruling words. So you think about words, punches and punches, rolling very fast and furious, where you can't always take them back. And it's also imageries, okay? I had a Mercury square Uranus at this time. What can I say? That's a no-no. So having the ruler of the sun in this Gemini placement. Now, if indeed Scorpio would be the 8th, this would be the 3rd house, that would mean we have constant conflict every now and then, constant conflict in the neighborhood, the neighboring countries. God damn it, this happens. I could be wrong about the ascendant, but again, if this is worst case scenario, I'm not wrong. Constant struggle with the neighborhood. We think Israel is a villa in the jungle. Go see Lebanon, how they live. They're more secular than us. So I think Shakira, the singer, is originally from Colombia, yes, but also Lebanon. So this is a very bad rulership of leaders, very bad placement for, okay, even if we don't take the 3rd house, this is still telling us that the ruler of the sun is conjoined here with Saturn. And I call it the syringe. Okay, I have this aspect with a way wider orb. Mars Saturn. Now, usually Mars Saturn, if it's like in Scorpio, like mine, it's you don't want to f with that person, because when they're going to respond, they are able to carry the roles of Saturn, the time of Saturn, the roles of Saturn, the length of Saturn, for the passion of Mars. Okay, here's a person you want on your side in general. Now, in Gemini, it's kind of silly, because over a silly thing, over a minor thing, or minor, you could argue for the length of Saturn. And with Mars, a conflict that begins here, even though it's Gemini, it's going to carry the timestamp of Saturn, because it's within orb. And everything we start here is going to carry for another 28 years. Think about the Lebanon wars. The Lebanon wars of Israel and Lebanon, okay? So there is an attempt here. So like, if we reset this thing and Israel's still on the map, let's get them into 28 years cycle of fight with the most secular country in the region outside Iran. And Iran, even of 1979, of the Ayatollahs, most Iranian people secular. Okay? Even the people inside Iran, most of them secular. Syria, why did Bashar al-Assad had to oppress the Sunnis so hard with his promise that he did rape? Shouldn't have done rape. That was undermining his regime. Maybe he had to do it, okay, because it's externally controlled. Yes, why? Because the Sunnis are the majority, but he represented Alawites, and he was tolerant towards Christians, and he wanted peace with Israel. Okay, it was friends. Iran, friends. Lebanon, friends. Jordan. Yes, just the king of Jordan. Have you visited Jordan? Jordan, before 7th October, we had a person going missing in Jordan. Just some person went missing in Jordan. Some people helped to bring him back to Israel. He crossed the border just like that. No passport, no nothing. And all the people did with the regime of Lebanon, hey, let's help bring this man to Israel. And Jordan is where they want to put the Palestinians, okay? But they're not happy with us politically. They don't like it, okay? But this is also unfair towards the Palestinian tribes, of which most of us, the people who lived on the land of Eretz Israel or Palestine, they are of these tribes, Jews or not. It's not fair because they move these people around all the time. Okay, they move these people around all the time. No Arab country wants them, pushing for solutions that are not really like having 20% of the land of Israel, of the entire Palestine, okay, stuff that they can't really agree with, and just try to shove them away, which again is not fair. Let people be. Make sure they have human rights, but other than that, let people be. So here you see, okay, in Egypt, okay, again, over Sinai. However, Sinai you can understand, it's territorial, it's this, it's that. But not big problems with Egypt, even when they changed for the Muslim brothers, still not big problems with Egypt. It's like it was really very difficult to get Israel's neighboring countries, after they accepted there's a new player in town, there's a very difficult to get them to be of enmity. Okay, it's very difficult. Of course, it's owned by Rothschild and Rockefeller. Who wants to be enmity with that? But it's also for diplomatic relations. It's very difficult. You have to manufacture a fight out of nothing, because these countries are going to lose. They're going to lose their territory, not because Israel, because Britain, because Vatican, by proxy Rothschild, Rockefeller. But the Vatican says, you think, oh, it's a small country within a city within Rome. They own the freaking world. Okay, so that's something we need to pay into consideration. Now, where's the ruler of this Mars and Saturn? That's Gemini. If we can put the ruler in detriment, so we're even more happy with this chart, and that's what they did. They put Mercury, which is the sign that rules engineering, technology, trade, and children, into the sign of Sagittarius. Okay? And so, if we can put the ruler in detriment, that would be all the best. When you think about a tree going to visit a new forest, and you ask the tree, what's the forest like? It's going to describe the tree in front of him, the tree next to him, and the tree next to him, and say, yeah, they have such and such leaves, such as that. And how big is the forest? Well, I don't know, maybe 10 trees, that's the most they can see, okay? Or they can say, well, because there's so much around me, oh, you don't believe it, because a child would see, oh, the entire earth is covered by this forest. And then you look at it from a drone, and it's like, that's not really true. This is the way Mercury is in Sagittarius, the sign of Jupiter, the sign of foresight. And so we have the sun in a nostalgic place that want to reunite the motherland, kind of like Mussolini, Hitler style, ruled by a Mars that is way too quick to act but take long time to finish wars, like 28 years. And the ruler of that complexity will touch at that Uranus. Saturn's going to go through it in the coming decade, is ruled by so not only is this Mars and Saturn, this kind of a worst place possible. Saturn is not fallen. Mars is not fallen in Gemini. Okay, it's fallen in Cancer, because that would be an emo. Okay, that would be a water sign. But Mars in Gemini is definitely prone to accidents, even more than the usual Mars. And so let's put the ruler Mercury in detriment as well, so that we don't have even clear thinking. When we want to apply engineering, we think of birds. Okay, this is where your engineer is supposed to work on a car, let's say. But they just want to be free. So they have the idea of a car, and they can paint beautiful cars. And like, can you make a car that works? Okay, they're not necessarily the right person to do that. This Mercury rules the war, the army, or rules the leader. This is fertile soil for Hezbollah. Because if we don't have a very strong army, okay, the army is more about ideas and so on, but this is more like the idea. But if you want to think about the army of Switzerland, there's nothing wrong with not having a strong army. Switzerland has a fallen Mars, a detriment Mars in Libra. Mars in Libra is kind of like, we're not sure what to do about this, but the strategy is banking. And so we know that Switzerland has a thing with banking. They may have to do with all of our children. So this is where you could deal with the bad Mars, but if everything is bad, then you understand this country was set. And you want to think about Lebanon, the Lebanon people and the Lebanon leaders, and you see, but these people, they are living in spite of the country. I just looked at what the moon is. We're going to talk about that too. So now that we're talking about Lebanon, this Mercury is opposing Uranus in Gemini. This Uranus is not too far from Aldebaran. So revolution in this country can be very successful. But not very heroic, because Mercury here, if Uranus is ideology, this is more industrial ideology. So this is a great country to do the WHO and the WEF and the 2030. Because these guys are industrial oriented, but don't really see for the things. Any revolution, terror that you do here can be victorious. Okay? That's Uranus. The ruler opposing this Uranus is giving us, okay, Mercury, Uranus gives us for things that just had to be said, but they create a reaction. Okay, this is being rebellious by words, but this can also be, unfortunately, kind of a Boko Haram style, because this is children. When you think about army of children against the revolution, the ruler against, is there internal tension when the ruler is opposing the planet where it rules? There is internal tension and conflict that's difficult to settle. So if we can have a revolution that's difficult to settle, why not? It is going to be prolonged. Wonderful. Okay, Uranus cycles are even longer. They are 84 years. And they are going to be having social revolution earlier than Israel. Okay, so if you think about, oh, Israel is probably, it's the Pfizer lab, it's the this, it's the that. This is where I'm afraid that they are preparing the ground to do, okay, to try to take over and dismantle Lebanon. And so if Scorpio would be the 8th house, it would be Aries ascendant, which is ruled by this very luxuriously it's not impotent Mars, okay? It's not impotent Mars. It's a Mars that is quick to act but takes long to get over fights, like 28 years long. And this is ascendant ruled by this, so this is absolutely worst case scenario, and it's compatible. And so that would mean Pisces would be the 12th. And so enemies also to do with Palestine, but also to do with shamanism, healing, holistic healing. So I predict that they are going to bring a version of holistic healing to Lebanon that is going to be not really good. Okay, for holistic healing, we think medicine has its pitfalls. Also, the type of shamanism where you put a person through unnecessary crisis is kind of like not really the best. And this is also the 9th house, ruler of the 9th house. But it can also be jails, can also be coming from the sea. Okay, attacks can come from the sea. And spies, intelligences. This again, just Jupiter is in Leo, conjunct in Lilith. So this can be spies, and their eroticism is involved, but not necessarily on a will and consent level. And so for these spies are ruled by some royal family or leaders that are externally owned. They can be spying on and off or by. This can be a government that spies on its people, if this is indeed 12th thing, but it's an international government. You see, fertile. So when you don't have ascendant, you have to assume the worst. And there's no reason for us not to have ascendant. These things are signed on the minute. All secret societies organized for what will be where. They don't want us to know that because this is too fucking obvious. Not all charts you can hide, okay? For the Israel chart, you could not hide. They would do everything to hide for the Israel chart, but they could not hide for the ceremony Okay, it was like this country, yes, this country, no. Okay, Saudi Arabia, maybe, if we even had that. Um, and so for Palestine, also, it's a high profile thing, so they can't really not tell us when Palestine, we're going to hear about it when there is an actual public chart for Palestine. Of course, they're very likely non public, but the public chart has significance. And then we have unknown hour for the birth of Lebanon during the Second World War, November 22. Okay, it's kind of like, hey, let's have a country where nobody hears about it and that they won't know the ascendant, and we can do whatever the F and activate this whenever we want. So we had the Lebanon wars, and then we had Hezbollah, and then okay, but how are the natural resources in Lebanon used? We don't know. They don't really have deep infrastructure on an overall. Okay, when I saw Lebanese people, even Lebanese diplomats, speak, but they say we don't have this electricity, this thing of what they have in Israel. We don't have it as prevalent, anywhere near as prevalent. So there's really something that's being kept from the people there. But it's not for to blame the leaders, okay, because externally owned. And so it's very much a people living in spite of whatever they did to them here. Very sad, okay, beautiful, beautiful country. And you see how, for all this British mandate, fumbled with, again, it's owned by world families that owned by Vatican. Okay, if they cut dividends to Vatican, it's because they cannot not cut protection. So the person use protection, they decide more than your investors what you do. Okay, if you saw, I'm not going to say that, but there is, let's say, in general cases, okay, that case where say a company or business doesn't pay well investors, okay, if it doesn't pay people the equity or something like that, so also these kind of quarrels, okay, but when you have to pay protection, this is where, and the protection is paid always to Vatican. That's something we need to keep in mind. So this Jupiter in Leo is not bad. It's also well aspected here. It's sextile Saturn's. It allows for foresight, but this is the foresight of the hidden enemies that are royal, but ruled by this sun that's externally owned. Again, it's given what we saw in Israel. Okay, same thing. Lilith here can tell us that it can tell us that the spies use sexuality as well here, but also issues with children, okay, lack of full and consent with children. Jupiter is another symbol of children. Jupiter also rules for Mercury, so these can be expandable children that are leaders, and the extortion happens through expandable children that are used as spies, but leaders have sex with children, which means rape. And that this is for the children having handlers and so on. That I think is the issue here. Then we have Pluto, 8 degrees Leo. Okay. So Pluto, 8 degrees Leo. This is a Pluto that sextile Uranus and trines Mercury. So secrets in in general. Why the Pluto Leo? So many countries around the Pluto Leo. Why? Because this is the hidden royalty. For example, Israel has Pluto Leo. It's a monarchy. It's not a democratic country. That's what I said. What I said. Okay, you can disagree with me. I said what I said. Pluto is something hidden. And now that we are Pluto on the opposite sign, we expose that. It's actually monarchy and a hidden monarchy, or not. Okay, for a person, okay, I'm getting again. So for the energies, that are the Fries had Pluto on Regulus in Leo, and he exposed the things of the monarchy. Okay, what were the extortions that came from there? We don't know, but still, for the monarchy, still externally owned. So they all go back to the Vatican. Again, I'm talking about countries. When of course countries and countries, people are people. Don't me. Okay, so the Pluto Leo is the age where we have secret monarchies, and we call them democracy. That's what it was. So, arguing life with an energy is a very entertaining. Now let's talk about something nice. Venus is at home. Now there is a Ketu on this Venus. It's going to be an eclipse with Ketu on Venus of Lebanon, which tells us that we are ripe for to absolve ourselves of the right of the one planet that is correct in the chart. So this is Venus at her home. She is, yes, still sextiling this Mercury, trining Uranus. Okay, so women in favor of the revolution. Venus in Libra, dignified. And indeed, what do we know? What do we know Lebanese? Oh, Shakira. Okay, I don't know her natal chart, but she's belly dancer, singer, very beautiful, and also very comfortable with her sexuality and sensuality. It's kind of like this balance where I can be a mom and I can be this and I can be that and I can be that. That's very Venus in Libra and very a beautiful image. So she's kind of what we see as representative of that dignified Venus here. Then we have Neptune in Libra, which again is not suffering. Neptune is considered by moderns the higher octave of Venus, the more spiritual one. But this is diplomacy, so this gives us very good diplomatic relations for this very weird country, a very weird natal chart, because the country is the country. The people did not choose of this natal chart. And we'll talk about the people in a minute. And so for this Neptune, yes, it's mitigating the opposition between Mercury and Uranus. This is where people can see a spiritual value in the revolution. I don't know if it's much of a mitigation, because it can keep you in the opposition, okay? And that's the dual nature of Neptune coming into play here, because Neptune would make you escape from something, okay? It's like, there's a war going on, oh, let's watch a movie. And indeed, film industry was doing great. This is telling me that very likely tremendous culture of poetry coming from Lebanon. I'm not educated on the culture of Lebanon, but this makes me want to be, okay? So modern Lebanon probably yielding great poets, great filmmakers, great musicians. But when it comes to finances, Neptune brings surrender. So it's like, yeah, you don't have much, but you surrender that. And you see, for the rural country in Lebanon, it is so beautiful that you say, if you think about the Swedes, when they go out to their cabins, if you're like me watching the Swedes with the cabins in in the north, okay, and they go and they have to travel to bring water, and they have to cut the trees, and so it looks very romantic. And they always make something artistic, and they have the conjoining of technology. So you could see how people can live with that. And still, I so need to do Sweden, and still have joy in their life and spiritual meaning and good life. So yes, I don't have a bad word to say about this Venus. And this is also important to remember. Okay, and let's see where Taurus is. Nothing in Taurus. Nothing eating at the heart. And Taurus is the second house, which... So Lebanon has also good diplomatic partners, stable diplomatic partners, stable diplomacy, albeit all these attempts. There's something very difficult to shake about Lebanon, albeit all these attempts. Very likely to be put by secret societies that don't really value for the potency of Venus, because they think, oh, it's not a problem to get over these spiritual women that don't know what's good for them. But it's not so. It's way more difficult to control Lebanon because of this strong Venus. People are not stupid. They might settle for less in terms of technology, but they don't settle for their culture. and they don't settle for their art, and they don't settle for the sensuality. So they have a hidden power here. And this Venus is also sextile in Pluto. So this is good power that is not going to be easy to maneuver, and this gives Lebanon the strength. Okay, if Lebanon treats women well, it's going to be very difficult, but this is also putting the emphasis on tending to the children. It's going to be the job of these women and their supporters to tend to expandable children, and to understand this is a reality and a global reality, because these are the people that can do something about this. For those women could have good relations with this hidden monarchy as well. And this makes Lebanon way more stable. It's very appropriate for secret patriarchal societies that don't think much of women or the feminine, to put a strong Venus where they think, oh, we can control by the expandable children, we can control these women. No, you cannot. They're not they're particularly rebellious. It is that they are, yes, they're not particularly rebellious, but what they are is they have their own intelligence, and they see wealth in a way that's slightly different, and they have diplomatic relations with other countries, that they can change for this compliance, but these women will still have to tend to the children, otherwise still gone. Okay, now let's talk about the last planet here, which is the moon, before we get to the transit. The moon is in 26 degrees Virgo, known as conjuncting Al-Qaid. Moon is the people. That would put it in the 6th house, so people are servants. Al-Qaid is where there's mass grief. This country was set up for democide. See, it's not a 22 moon like Ukraine. The people, they tell them, "Oh, this is how you make a Molotov. Go fight the laser from the Nova." Okay, we heard about Maui. If we're very, very resourceful, we heard about Nova. If we're even more understanding, we understand it's not just bombs in Gaza, but we didn't hear about Ukraine and laser. I don't think that there isn't one. Okay? I don't think it's all Putin. Otherwise, why did Finland join NATO and bought the Kela David? Okay, for the same laser. It's going to use to democide the Finnish people, more so than to fight Putin. And this is my great concern, because Finland is such a beautiful country where so many things were going more to the right direction, whether it's the moon in Taurus in some of the charts, this work-life balance, whether it's the open dialogue and housing first that were made in US and Netherlands, but actually properly practiced in Finland, very likely to have deep dark secrets as well. They used to castrate the mentally ill, they kidnap children, still going on. It still brings a havoc on the country, and makes it expandable, because for when the children are expandable, everything is, and that we need to remember and to understand. It has an expiration date. So here we see the moon. Al-Qaeda, yes, people can ask for the protection of the big bear. It's appropriate for people to magically work with Al-Qaeda. Very likely they have premonitions, or they have the connection to do so. But they do need to work with this. Otherwise, it's given democide. And it's also given democide that the people themselves are doing. Okay? So this in a situation of civil war, and we see here for the for the square relation between Saturn and the moon, the division in society, People can murder each other. This is given Hezbollah as well. Hezbollah is not fighting against Israel as much as it's fighting against the people of Lebanon. And this is where kind of the big issue stemming from. Okay, so this is what I kind of don't like about the chart. Now let's go to the transits. Gonna locate Pluto in the 11th house, which is given this Saturn Mars, ruled by the Saturn Mars. Saturn in the 12th. Saturn in the 12th can actually be defending. Okay, Saturn is at home in the 12th. According to whole sign astrology, I think Chris Brennan wrote a great book and essay about the joy of planets in Hellenistic astrology. This would mean Saturn is at home in the 12th. We want Saturn in the 12th in elections. So transiting of Saturn to the 12th is not easy, but it can get you out of here addictions, spies being exposed, like this video, and so on. It's also giving, so this is where we have Pluto, okay, between the 10th and the 11th house playing along. And we have Sedna, that would be the 3rd house for Mercury. And Sedna in Gemini, okay, ruled by this Mercury. And we have Uranus in Taurus, would be the 2nd house, Urano Algol, which would trine the moon. And that's important. Okay, so for Lebanese people to work with Al-Qaeda, work with Beta Persei, Al-Qaeda, to ask for the protection of the big bear would be appropriate. Protection from genocide, protection from physical harm. That would be very appropriate. And to tend to the expandable children. Okay, this is something that they can call on, that stands for them. Now we said we are going to make the worst possible assumption. So the worst possible assumption is that this Aries ascendant is conjuncting Aries and Chiron. And it's even worse possible assumption that this Aries ascendant is a 22-degree Aries ascendant, which would mean Chiron is going to go over this 22-degree retrograde and triggering acts of war and fights. We see this Saturn Jupiter coming up for the square, and you see this event that happened. So we had and the Mercury and the first degrees of Virgo, which would, okay, the square with Uranus, the Mercury square with Uranus would conjoin Jupiter in Leo, and indeed we saw an event where children, something supposedly coming from Lebanon, children are hurt, maybe spy children, very expendable children, we don't know. They will definitely be used as expendable children. Then this is kind of a plan and going over Sedna. And so we have a public betrayal that leads to something that could develop into something very unpleasant for the people of Lebanon, because the moon is in Virgo, co-present with this Mercury. It's going to be Mercury retrograde. Mercury is not going to touch on the square to Mars, which means there may be an almost war. So what's standing for us is that it can be an almost conflict, an almost war, but it's going to go direct, and these things have duration, okay? But what we see, the Saturn-Mars conjunction, and this is very important for people of Lebanon to ask for protection of the big bear, to work with Al-Qaeda against assassination, and to tend to expendable children. Not to forget that the topic is expendable children. This usually happens when there is a crisis, perhaps some scandal that's supposed to be exposed on the eclipse of October around expendable children, is giving us, okay, some hidden scandal, somebody whistleblowed, somebody this, somebody that, and other the fact that it was planned, it can give us for attempt to do this now. This tells me that betrayal is involved, and this is betrayal of neighboring countries or betrayal, kind of like inner betrayals. It's kind of like a civil war that is involved here in putting Lebanon in this risk. Now, because what the spies, if they're like, who are the spies? The expendable children. This is also a lesson to Israel. Let's go back to the chart of Israel. Because in Israel, after the yes, what you want to see, what the current planets, it's this, first of all, let's take this moon and have this is an anaretic ascendant. You see, this is good time to predict for the ascendant is anaretic, sun in the 10th house, moon in the 7th, and Mars is killing it. Now we go for this. Yes, we're approaching Al-Qaid, so let's call on Al-Qaid, let's call on Antares, Aldebaran, Archangel Michael is appropriate before we're going to discuss the next topic and to the chart of Israel. Saturn hour, I don't give a flying fuck because they might divert the flight and hurt children. So this is where we go back to the chart of Israel, both for Lebanon and for Israel. Now, for Israel, after 7th October, many people were looking at who the traitors are. Who are the traitors? Off with their heads. They use expendable children. This means that the spies that they use to infiltrate our systems are children that they were. Why did we have Ehud Barak in Epstein Island? What was he doing there? Okay, how many secrets on the Lebanon war was he? That's the guy that got us out of Lebanon, but also that's the guy that got us into the second war of Lebanon. Okay, so what was this guy telling for all these children that he slept with? You think it's okay that I slept with children? It's no problem. I did this, but it's okay. Because he was confronted. He's one of the only people that were confronted. And now, oh my God, you're so sleepy, cat. Oh, so sleepy, cat. And now, what you need to understand is the way that this expendable children goes in terms of spying and extorting politicians is that they would have these events. Mind you, the politicians themselves, they make them pedophiles. How? They are born, tortured, raped, if not murdered, and they have to murder and rape and electrocute. Then they are grown and they are born into this Boko Haram-like lifestyle. Boko Haram is not only Africa, it's all of the cultures and all of your leaders, musicians, judges, everybody that wants to be somebody, okay? Or is destined or elected by bloodline for to be somebody. They're targeted by blood. And even when they are mixed race, okay, they are still making very sure they see all the bloodlines and they make for experiments for the bloodline of this person. So even with biodiversity, there's no willing consent, and they are born in breeding camps. So they are going through the Holocaust all the time. Every once in 80 years or so, they have to perform another Holocaust that is well known. That's life, as per for these people. And so, of course, we would get the politician that would sleep with the child because he is in this system that the way out is death, but not nice death. If we don't get that, we don't understand the system, so we're just going to go to the usual off with their heads. It's so very tempting. It's everybody are waiting for the hanging ropes and for this and for that. They're used to it. They saw it done to children. They would electrocuting the children. But they know it. We just enable for the democide globally. Because we don't ask who is extorting, who is handling these children. And so, if you want to know who are the immediate extorters of the politicians, look no further than the children that you didn't bother What's done with them when they kidnapped from the welfare, when they are not even registered at birth, when they try to find for a safe place and you call the welfare or call the police that calls the welfare, you don't check what is with this child. And when stories come out and you don't believe the child, or the child says, I was raped, I was hurt in this and that, and you say, oh, they're probably trying to make it, but they probably don't like it there, so they try to change. And you believe the doctors and the authority figures that are expendable children themselves by now. The same people that would tell you now, when this is your family member, but the doctors tell you if they don't take this pill, they will try to kill themselves, they will die. When essentially they try to kill themselves because they know what the doctors are going to tell you, so they thought they want to escape beforehand, and so it looks to you logical, they already tried to kill themselves. Open dialogue, housing first is the only way to tend, okay? Also, they force people. You said this person is not fit to work because they're sick. Why do you force them to work for you with no money? Or they don't get housing and you force them to take a medication or they don't get housing. Don't you see something crooked? If the families agree to that, why do the families agree to that? Because it's more comfortable, because the child making problems. Yes, they say the Shabak, the CIA is surveilling them. Okay, it's more tempting to say, well, maybe this child is dreaming, than to understand you living in a police world, not police state. And children are more frequency sensitive, and they can be targeted for SRA from afar. Not even with physical touch. You don't know that. It seems like a chisbat, okay, like a story that you tell. Okay, when I was in high school, and mind you, in one of the central cities in Israel, children were talking about the cult of Satan and this and that, and killing cats, that it was sacrificing cats, and I was like, oh, what is this stupid people doing? And went on along my day. Okay, whereas I didn't know that next to me in my school there were children of banking families, of entertainment elite, of journalism elite, of business elite, and that was the practices. I just thought what was a stupid thing to do, but I didn't. Or these cults where you think it's a story that is imaginary story. No, I was not a conspiracy person. So I thought, okay, if something I can do right now to help, yes, but if I don't know, well, the police will tend to that. This is what we think, because there's a completely different split between worlds of the people who are not targeted and the people who are targeted. And so it's a split in the reality, so much so that you do think about the other person, or for what they say, or what it is, maybe happened only to them. But other people are also tempted to think, oh yes, this person, all the time they have a story. They go to this workplace, to that workplace, all the time they have a story. Why is all the time they have a story? Maybe the targeted individual. And this makes more sense, more explanatory force. Scientifically, your imagining has no explanatory force. Okay, it's not a valid argument scientifically to tell for somebody you're imagining, because a more scientific thought is to say what patterns are going on here. This is scientific thought. And so when you look for who was the traitor, well, they sent for the children and the politician raped them. But it's not just that, for the politician told for what the secret of what it is, because this deep loneliness that they have to carry, and the child is programmed to hear of these stories and to tell it to the handler, and the child later forgets. They go to torture with electrocution, put a lot of energy so the child will forget. If they remember, they tortured again. Look to SRA survivors, okay? Survivors of satanic abuse, okay? Go to Imagination Podcast, Annika Lucas Podcast. Listen to Ronald Bernard. Again, okay, for all of these sources. Read Hans' book, okay? For you can order this This is the whistleblower on the Deming, but his wife, Kalen Pilot, his wife was tortured. Then he was tortured in hospital, psychiatric hospital, because he whistleblowed. And even the greatest journalist that tends to these things could not help him because he was working. I guess the story that worked with Deming, but because in the beginning of his career he was trying to tend to that, and then they took a child on his name, Petrce Ord, Peter Oude Vries, Petrce and Petrce, raped, murdered, electrocuted, killed him, and then they didn't know who did this. They blamed the brother, and Peter says it's not the brother, but the brother committed suicide. And this is where the book A Murder Costs More Life is about. I don't know if you can get it in English. I'm still trying to locate it and get the copy in Dutch. So if that's what they did, and the symbolism that was there is still pertaining to today's politics if you watch the episode. It's in Dutch, but I think if you want to understand what's going on, you would still understand. And so, both in Lebanon and in Israel, when they would look for who are the spies, and spies are ruled by Pisces, which is ruling Jupiter's children. For they need to ask who are the handlers and who ordered this. Even when we take Deming, okay, the judges, the Supreme Court judge, that he made it impossible to investigate his case, exposed the structure of the juristic system in Netherlands, and the KLM pilot Hans lost his Dutch nationality, living in Spain. Okay? All of these things that even our leaders are trapped in, having to perform. You can imagine what a grown child, that the solution for what the experience, or the targeting the experience, is housing first and open dialogue, but they have to send people to psychiatric hospital, otherwise they are tortured to death. Still today. This is why they do these demo slides. This is what's done here. And this needs to be said. Okay? And it's also important for us because it's not about exposing, oh, this leader does it. Yes, they will assassinate this leader, that leader. But the next one will do the same. You want to change for that system. Because what you want is to change the reality, not to do headhunting. That's the thing. It's to tend to expandable children. If you care about the children, but need to tend to it where it's actually beginning. And so when people are looking for the traitors, they're looking for, if you're looking for your leader, you're like at the lowest on the chain of food. You're looking for the intelligence, a bit upper on the chain of food. You understand that the intelligence is diddling children, and it's the children that are programmed and extorted in this way, upper on the chain of food. Who is handling the children? Upper on the chain of food. Who is ordering this handling? Upper on the chain of food. Who is commanding the person holding this? This is the Vatican. That's who they got protection to. That's what we still deal with. That's what we need to tend to. It's nothing to do with Jesus, nothing to do with Christ, nothing to do with putting money on a plate. It's everything to do with the children. So, is there going to be war? That there's attempts to create here for conflict. How is it going to work? Well, Mercury is not going to square Mars just yet. Okay, it's going to go almost, then retrograde, and so on. So if the Lebanese people work with Al-Qaeda, they get better chances, but they have to tend to expendable children. If Israelis want to tend to expendable children, and they will call the revacha, call the welfare, call the police, call the this, call the that, or give you rehabilitation, it's like, yes, I got the work for you to do. Yes, they need your work. I said, the person just left violence. What work? For them to be targeted at work again, you say, oh, everybody, they don't get along anyway, because it's a targeted individual. Okay, break the bridges. If we can break the bridges between the worlds, break the bridges. If we can create the bridges between the worlds, but not to break the bridges, so that we can have these people understanding before the death camp is in your area. Okay, yeah, my grandfather was surviving of such death camp. Of course, he did not escape through Germany, and of course, people when they are in the death camp, they don't have documents. Okay, so you understand who got the shilumim, right? It's not that they didn't suffer, but you got to be smart. And so when you get that, then you understand from what my grandfather did. He would go out of the camp, get food back into the camp, out of the camp, back into the camp, okay? Until one day there was a rebellion, the gate was broke, they ran out, they were shooting at them, and he managed to run through Italy. Brother escaped to Germany, got money. But that was a bit risky to escape for a Jew to Germany. Thank God for to Israel, where people would say, why didn't Hitler finish with all of you? And so that was the warm welcome for Holocaust survivors. The steel struggle. And so, and let us not be fooled when Germany says, we are with Israel, we are with this, we are with that, not with Israel. They are with legalizing pedophilia, which was recently happening in the parliament, and tackle the genuine crisis of where the leaders are the expandable children older, and that they genuinely don't really have a way out of this unless they somehow manage to kill themselves, and it's not, they don't have access to like cyanide or something is actually useful for that. And tending to that, they tend to it by trying to legalize pedophilia, which would only exacerbate the problem and not actually resolve of the situation. And then we also have to understand that because so much is invested in creating for ability of a person to rape a child, okay, it's not natural to human being. And so because so much is created, when you relax the stress, things begin to come up. So of course the person cannot work. It's not that you shouldn't allow them to work if they want to, but they can, but you cannot force them to work. That's the point. And when they get the housing first in areas where they don't have children next to them, and then when you get when you believe them, then things are going to come up and out all of our politics, and it takes years. But then you also don't have pedophilia because they go back to loving themselves. And yes, it's pedophilia is not a sexuality. Pedophilia is the result of immense torture that is, and programming that is set for to mess with the sexual energy of children, and deprive them so much so that the ability to be cruel to children is born, but it's not irreversible. That being said, doesn't mean that these people will live next to children, but definitely it's a far better way than to legalize pedophilia and to neglect the fact that this is terrible damage. Yes, I don't want to use words like irreversible or that, but this is terrible, terrible, terrible damage that many people spend years, decades still processing, still overcoming. And we definitely don't want to grow our leaders that way, to grow our children that way, to grow our judges that way, just because, some, I don't know, it's not even elite. They cut dividends from that and control the sexual energy of the world by that, and then they blame it on Satan. Okay, that they created that Satan. So And this is true on both indigenous societies and not indigenous societies. If we want to intercept a world war, we need to genuinely tend to the children. And if you ask who will care for the children, who will this, who will that, well, we have to believe the children. We have great foundations of housing first, of open dialogue for adults, okay? And we have, for when it comes to the children, then believe in the child, and the child having sovereignty has to be a cultural thing. And this is where we can't get around culture. Believe in the child has to be a cultural thing. We can't get around culture. We have politics, we can have judges, we can have rules. We can't get around the culture of societies and them embedding with these cultures. Otherwise, the Satanists can say we are correct. People need enlightenment. And then you said, go back to world wars, go back to countries, go back to escaping a democide in your country and then going to the next country where people say to you, or you think it's the promised land for your people. Okay, but in Africa, African people use the word diaspora. Okay, for when they talk about coming back from the diaspora, they still use to come back to the motherland. Yes, but if we don't tend to the children, and even biodiversity is not enough without of willing consent, okay, then it's just going to happen again. We're just going to have wars. We're just going to have this. We're just going to have for technologies because people would feel better with a robot than with a human being. The robot you can program. Okay? For the human being, we can only program if you're in MK Ultra or something. And so on. So that is what I have to say about this. We are at the Pluto point where the opposite pole was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But we need to remember that. Because right now we are evolving to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But what we didn't have is sedna, where we can talk about these children. And sedna is also amputated limbs in Gemini. And so we saw that in the wars there are many such cases. Well, they are intending to instill the biometric and face recognition. So you see there's something really fucked up. Okay, happening all in all. And nature does correct for itself, but if we can help, if we cannot be in the way of a nature to correct for itself, we do not comply to the biometric in as much as we can, okay, and as much as we have power. For those of you who are Israelis, I got the bot of the Ministry of Interior Affairs to admit that the biometric stamps are illegal, and it's illegal to ask for biometric stamps. Okay, they say it is illegal, but it is defended by, is protected by the laws that deal with protection of privacy. But the first is said, the sentence is, this is illegal, זה לא חוקי. Okay, so if you want that, it's posted this on my Facebook, but if you want that, I can send you that. So this can be of use to you if you intend to take it legally, and you can check for that in your countries. You want to use the prompts of the free person, the free man, and say this is illegal, and use the word the free man. This is illegal, and so on. If you say this is illegal, this is illegal, this is illegal, and I ask you to abolish this, and so on, and then you would get because there are bots, then you would get a bot telling you that, and you get a bot telling you that, and you put them in a bigger problem and let them deal with that problem. Now, remember for the mask in Israel, when we wanted to remove for the insane conditions of fines with the mask of what people did, everybody filed a complaint, and we flooded them bureaucratically, and then they stopped. Okay, these things. So we have the power of the people to do the practice today that they want to flood us with bureaucracy. We're going to flood them with even bigger bureaucracy. It's going to be so messy for them to tackle that they will just let it go. Okay, that is That's basically how it's done. Um, in Netherlands, there was the story that during Rutte's time, they gave certain fund uitkering for children, and then they could ask for it back. That was causing the fall of Rutte. And when you learn about expendable children, you see what. But also in Israel, before 7th of October, there was a scandal in a hospital where children were replaced at birth. And I saw this happening in Netherlands as well. So thanks to Frizz and Spanje for sharing this. I saw this happening in Netherlands, and it's happening in Israel for 7th of October. So there's the tackling the replaced at birth. Again, you have to understand that all of the public figures, if you are the child of such a person and you try to expose this scandal, you understand, you might see mommy, you might see daddy in one of these movies. You have to prepare yourself psychologically. There's nothing that can prepare psychologically, and to understand that there's no way to go around with these things when we tackle the topic in our lineage, so that we can off with the practice of expendable children rather than off with their heads. It's not an egoic thing. It's not for they are in the other team, the other football team, where they are supposed to say that they think so and they promote so policy and so on. It's not about the character thing. Nobody has a good character when they are programmed with this expandable children MK Ultra okay, stuff. If we are to tend to that, it's not going to be a washing card. It's not going to be a washing card. Yes, and the murder costs more lives. So we need to remember for that as well. I'll see you in my next video. This was a revealing one. I wonder if it has to do with the talisman that I did. And I'm going to watch right now both Victor's Mercury retrograde video and Yair Tribelsky's video. The Yair Tribelsky is in Hebrew. I'm trying to get him to do English, but I'm bad with appointments and he's bad with doing this in English. He knows English very well, but it's very artistic and it's difficult to translate all of his poetic artistry to another language. If I can get him on this podcast, that would be great. And I am the problem. Me and my appointment issues with Uranus in the third house of routine. So yes, and he talks about what the transit was and all what we saw. Okay, so basically saw various children hurt during a football game, and for this to be used as excuse to strike Lebanon, which did us nothing wrong. If you have problems with Hezbollah, we should turn to the Vatican. When the protection companies wants it to be safe, and I'll tell you a story about Michael Jackson. Oh, after I did the talisman, there was a song of Billie Jean, but it's not the Billie Jean, it's not my love line. It was just kind of, I don't remember. Yes, and so Michael Jackson, there was a town that he performed. I don't remember even where, and there was a mafia crime family. Well, the crime family, they liked Michael Jackson so much that they said that this city is going to be so safe for the time of the filming of the video for Michael Jackson that everybody would want to live in it during those 3 days or that week. And so it was. When the people you pay protection to, when they want the world to be safe, not a child will be touched with a psychic or a physical finger. Not a woman will be raped, not a man will be raped, not a person will be robbed if those who pay protection to want for the place to be safe. Okay, all of these royal families, all of these Jewish royal wealth families. Okay, the Rothschild, the Rockefeller. Okay, the people that give me my outcarrying, sponsored by Rockefeller, and so on. All of these people, who do they pay protection to? What they cut dividends to? The Vatican. Ba'aden secret societies, Ba'aden Satan, Ba'aden the Jews, but then the royal families, but then Christianity or the church. Okay? Obey, Vatican. The rest is proxy. That is something that we need to remember. If they want the world to be safe, it will be safe. If they don't want the world to be safe, it's a problem. And we have to understand that this is where it's coming from. But for that, we need a certain enlightenment of what they call, because not to hate your neighbor, not to hate on gender, not to hate on people that need this type of medical treatment, that type of medical treatment, not to hate on origins, not to hate on the myth of, what do we call it, the nation state. This is one of the funniest things, for funniest myths created. When you look at it financially, okay? If I listen to Ronald Bernard, I'm like, he doesn't even talk about this. And I'm like, oh my God, you see the world differently. You see the world differently. Okay, so that's an offshore business. That's an offshore. Oh, they're all in debt because this business has to be in debt with taxation. And this business, okay, this is what you do for to launder the money, for to use it. But then the business is in debt for to pay taxation. So no business can be not in debt. So we have to be all the time in debt. And then in debt, you are expendable. They just change the interest rates and salamat. You don't have housing like there was in 2008 housing crisis. Even when for some people warn you about this. So you're like, okay, for nation state it's a great offshore business. All the time in war. And then people need welfare, then you launder the money. And they pay taxes for the welfare, and you make them do for the work. Or you make them to take pharmaceuticals, okay? You crunch them in houses so they will have not enough space, although there's more than enough space for all of us to live in. You don't give them for the thing that help them to avoid unwanted pregnancy. Okay, just good order. Money flows like oil. And they don't get to use for the old oil because they don't own it. So you can make oil crisis whenever you want. You can make anti-Semitic crisis whenever you want. You can make democide, genocide crisis whenever you want. Always people need weapons. God forbid a woman and a man to trust each other. God forbid a woman and a woman to trust each other, a man and a man to trust each other. God forbid people with this non-conforming gender identity to see the world from more than one point of view. Okay? God forbid they don't need a surgery to enforce their identity. And with the breeding, you said this bloodline, if we want that, we won't want that. The weather control is nothing. It's the bloodline. And then when there's missing person, you say, it's no problem. You tell your father, oh, your father's dead yet, so we don't even need to talk to you. We say you can ask for the documents. And you know very well that the documents were used to steal identity, and the person was targeted for the bloodline. And maybe this was the kind of a Cassandra person that doesn't go with the belief of the elders or the Satanists or the church and have their own point of view. Okay? You say, it's no problem. You can say that, you can do that. Yes? But there's a movie with your father. Or even not that. You have children. Okay? And this is how we would get cold cases where they would say, if you found this Visa card and you know that you are talking with people that their intelligence is 70 times above for this level of intelligence society, did you see the Visa? Who's going to see the Visa? They murdered her for the Visa, for the bloodline. They couldn't make this, they couldn't make that. So they flew the body in the river. And then they took the identity. Then you need another person for the fingerprint. And you make new identities. And it's not the same web and it's not the same coin for the trading. So, geen probleem. But maybe they were high profile, so you could hide this, they argue with this, they argue with that. Had sex with this person, threw the body in the river, and you got cold case. Maybe you saw the documents, 2 passports. 2, not 1, 2. Okay? So, and so this is still done, and this is something that we all need to tend to. And yes, there's a certain level of intricacy which is needed. Okay, when women got right to vote, they had to look who is the party that changes things, who is the party that preserves things, or the conservatives preserve. So after we got right to vote, we vote conservative. So we keep that. And they had to learn all kinds of intricacies, how to run a business. Okay, if you listen to what the people tell you, how to run a business. Okay, so come on, let's go to work. I need to make money. With what money? Nobody made money without money. How will you make money? Would you print money? How would you make money? Money is something that you make with money. But my grandparents, there was a world war in between. There was an oil crisis in between. But people changed that, but they changed the coin. In Israel was only 75 years. It was one with the, I think it was lira, then there was old shekel, then there was new shekel, now they have a digital coin. 75 years, that's it. When I was born in 1984, I'm only 40 years old. Okay? For my mother, she remembered from the old shekel changed to new shekel. But she also remembered the lira. She was a very young child, just 2 generations. 2 generations. That's it. So you think your children will not have a different coin? So what will ensure that they will have for the housing or all these things? You put your money. You say, I don't mind, I put the money on weapon trade, people always need medicine, people always need this. Okay, you don't mind until you say, oh, how terrible they treated so-and-so in this hospital. We knew that this person, he was not supposed to die. He was a healthy person, like an ox. Yes, for this, the money that you invested, it yielded. That's your investment yielding. That's the yield. Why can't they just buy weed? In my age, we bought simple things, and first of all, they're lying. They had this organization, that organization, that organization, that organization, that crime organization, and they would go for vacation here, but they don't tell you for what vacation. And they don't remember this very much. Okay? And they didn't do much at work either, because you couldn't fire them. Okay? It was not private sector. It is, but private sector has also problems. And so, but they tell you, we bought this, we bought that, we had lived in a small house that you owned. We just ate for this food that was organic. Without it being organic, it was just the food, that it was food, it was nourishing. So we weren't hungry all the time. Now these children always want to travel here, to buy that, because they were encouraged to consume. For to resolve the 29 crisis, so that you will have a house. Still the same habit. It's a habit that was formed. For to live in interest and to pay, in Hebrew we laugh and say in tashlumim, okay, in payments. You forget your own history, so you fight with your children over nothing. Until it's your grandchildren that were replaced at birth. So this is compatible for Saturn hour to talk about the karma of these things and the intergenerational aspects of these quarrels. Okay, you do not understand the world that your children are living in, because it's not the world that you are living in, because they don't have your conditions and you don't have their conditions. So you don't get it. And they do that. I'll tell my intergenerational story. I was going for a place where they would have a demonstration around like environmental things, and I was just going there for food. I was in between houses, and so all the food was vegan. I did not have a correct okay excretion for 3 days, but the food was very tasty. But it's something my body was supposed to be ready for with that ease. And then for the people that are talking about climate depression, and I had to hold myself. Okay, I was like, wait, what? But then I remembered when we were talking about psychological abuse, our parents had to hold themselves because they're like, well, I didn't hit you. I was the only mother in the town that wasn't hitting their children. I'm a good mom. Okay? So, and terribly, they're right. Okay? And they also had to learn for what these things. But for what is climate depression, is when they do think about another industrialized revolution, the children that are born, they are more connected to nature. And so they try to do something about it. And of course, the people that created this crisis, they appeal to them as, come, take our solutions. Okay? And so the children are connected with the trees, not because, in my family, we liked to have like a picnic. So we would go to nature and we would have stay there and so on, fight with the mosquitoes. And that was a holiday. That was how we connected with nature. But for these children, they are speaking with the trees, they're connected with the trees, they understand for the ecosystem, and this is being capitalized on by people who say, yes, let's make this solution for that solution, but it's not always for the correct solution. And they can have ideation for the times where the tribal society was living with the trees, but they don't know all the history of how it changed, and then they can idealize the tribes, which is what we had during Hitler time. It's like, let's get, Uranus and Taurus, let's build with nature and so on and so forth. Nature is lovely, but we also have to be good human beings to each other. And so it's different generation. Okay, but what you have to do is kind of like hold that and see that at first it's kind of like, this is all funny what they're talking about. They're talking about the destruction of our lungs, basically, the destruction of the forests, not by COVID. COVID is targeted individuals. It was not COVID, it's not only targeted individuals. And if you see who was sick in COVID and died, okay, not like a flu, who was sick in COVID and died, you would see this is Nikola Stojanovic, who talked about the 22nd degree, 18th degree, 11th degree, and degree theory in astrology, which allows you to look at cold cases, murder, poisoning, electricity and suicide, induced suicide by electricity, 11th degree. Okay, just what entire water expands upon cooling is dedicated to, just the studies of this degree. Okay, you would see famous astrologers who suddenly had COVID, and then they took a booster shot and another booster shot and another booster shot until they took vitamins and they got out of it. But they had serious COVID. Why? Because they were coming as prominent astrologers and they could be effed with. Some astrologers could not be. Lada Duncheva could not be effed with. Okay? She knows the drama, she knows the drill. She's from Bulgaria, she knows of what you targeted individuals because she knows witchcraft. Okay, she knows what the dark, what the light. You can't F with her. Okay, but American astrologers, they don't really have this, don't really have this connection. They are still working. So on the one hand, they're very aware of kind of like LGBTQ and so on and so forth. But for the other hand, is that they are extorted by the secret societies. And so you can't talk about Epstein, you can't talk about the working camps in Oregon, even if you live in Oregon. You can't talk about so many things on a public level, because the risk is to targeted individuals. And just in my astrology community, I see who was sick. Well, how come the people that were sick made significant astrological contribution to the community and to humanity, even for not on a paid basis? Okay? Okay? And then I remember when there were the story of this celebrity that was exposed for like the Me Too case. And one of my colleagues were like, yeah, but they were changing themselves and so on and this and that. And I was like, what are they talking about? And I made another video, of course, not arguing with them, but was in my view. What I know what they're talking about now, because all of these people are the expandable children grown. But when your 12th house is Capricorn, you can't really explain that all that much, all that easily. When your 12th house is Aquarius, you can explain it because you were from out of the system. Okay, for these astrologers, they knew for these celebrities. And so there's levels of, okay, for something you have to talk about this, we can't talk about that. It's the higher pyramidical structure. But for 12th house astrology, Aquarius, then you're more from outside of the system, also outside of the cult, and then I'm more able to talk about what these things they couldn't talk about, but I didn't understand that these things, I had to learn them for myself, that they are the expandable children projects, and that's why what they were trying to defend at this person, that was like, but this person was raping people. Yes, because it's the expandable children grown, and this is for the extortion, so what they were doing is to expand this person, because they were talking against the WHO. All of these people raped people. All of these people were raped by people, so the electrocuted, the expandable, all of that, and the GANs, elite, everybody. And if you wanted to be an astrologer, then you had to read for these people. You had to comply with these people. You had to get the charts of these people. Okay, and so you needed to communicate in some way, and you couldn't expose for these things that me from outside of the cult have the privilege, and I milk every drop of this privilege to tend to, even if it's difficult, even if it is these dead journalists that I was channeling, okay, and they have living children, even if this leader that I was called to look at their chart, even if okay, this actor that I like, all these things, because I'm not in the cult, okay, then I milk every drop of privilege I have to talk of things outside of the order of the cult. Of course, it's more shadow banned and less visible, and of course, it's not allowing me to make money off astrology regularly as my colleagues had to, okay? Because they don't have Rothschild or Rockefeller or stuff like that. But for me, it's like I don't have ability to make money legally in the location where I'm at. So it's one thing, but then I do have what they want to be is the solutions that you're aligned to welfare. And this does allow me, even if I don't have a lot of food, to do for what I do right now, which I think is more important than to compromise things that eventually, even if you're not directly funded by these people, you have to go to these secret societies that are funded by these people and eventually cut dividends to the church. And if you don't want to do like organized crime, then there are things that you can't talk about. And this is why we didn't see a lot of American astrologers talking about Assange. But this is why we saw WikiLeaks, even though the pro-Palestinian people did not protest, which is intelligence. I hope you understand that. It's not Palestinian intelligence. Hope you get that. Okay. And so you saw that suddenly WikiLeaks had to, upon the release of Assange, say, well, the Palestine, when Congo. Okay, of course we talk about the Palestine with Congo. I don't know how many millions, like more than 6-7 millions people slaughtered, dead, raped, tortured. Who's gonna know? Okay, the change in Africa. What, can we get African people to talk about Congo? Like even that. Africa, we're chilling. Africa, Congo! That's not the time to be chilling. Chill, drink, relax. 10 to Congo. 10 to, what is it, still Sudan. We still have Sudan. Like after 2008, I was working for a hotel where we had employees coming from North and South Sudan. Okay. And they were working there. Yes, I had one case where I have a woman calling her husband. Husband was in jail. And I was angry. Why did they arrest him? Why did they this? Why did they that? And then I call for the husband in jail. He tells me, yes, but I'm arrested because in here, and it sounds very helpless, you cannot beat the wife. Okay? So I folded my tail between my legs and my ears, and I had to admit that we also have to change for the culture of the tribe, so it would not be arrested. Okay. The one time Israeli police was arresting the beaten husband, this one who was an immigrant. Yes, and her papers was by him in jail, so he was reading me the number of the paper so I can hire, so I can put her in the computer and she can start to get paid. So that was my humble introduction. That was in 2008, or even 2008. We are in 2024. Let's talk about Sudan. Okay, I think Ethiopia still has things to talk about, and it's true. Africa is not just this, is not just that, but I think is appropriate for African people to not stop talking about Congo, even when we want to say Africa, we're chilling. No, you're not. In some countries you are. Also in Israel. Right now, I'm chilling. I could say Israel, we're chilling. Or you could take a show, but it would be the same as to take a photo of a person in Gaza. Say, I'm chilling. You're chilling, good. What about the people in Congo? Let's talk about NATO. Let's talk about these things. But no, if you paid for NGO to do videos in Africa, we're chilling. Okay, so this is, if you're African, you want to talk about this, I'll put the link of your video down below. I do not consider it bad. Okay, put the link of your video down below. It's with the shadow ban, so we can talk about it. If you're Palestinian, you want to talk about this. It's about your people, and you somehow are not affiliated with the global intelligence. Or you want to talk about how they target LGBTQ people, then you put a link to your video in the comments. So, yes, there are all these things happening. So this is, what did I do here? No, this is the transits. This is the state of Israel. Okay, it's not my horoscope. Thank you. I do reside here, but safe. And 22, Jupiter, let's release this.